Assalamu alaikum, program Perspectives, and I'm your host Ghulam Nabi Morai. Viewers, we discuss in depth the subject from various perspectives in this program. An analyst, intellectual and a writer, Syed Mohibullah Shah Sahab is always with us in this program. Shah Sahab, Assalamu alaikum. Shah Sahab, today is the subject of your interest, Shah Lateef Bhetai. And our topic is Shah Lateef, the Polymath poet of Sindh. And my first question comes like this: who was Shah Lateef and why is he so unique about him? What is so unique about him?
Thank you, Morai sir. It is an important subject, and I think we need to talk about it, especially to a wider audience, the English-speaking people, because his philosophy and his reformist agenda has not been projected as well as it deserves. So we think this is a good way that we start this kind of a program, and we hope that we'll be able to convey his message to a wider audience. Now, Shah Lateef Bhetai is the 18th century great scholar, a social scientist, and a reformer from Sindh. He used his powerful poetry to convey his message, a universal message of interfaith harmony, of empowerment of people, and of enlightenment of society. This is a message which is unique. At the time in 17th and 18th century, no, you will not find any other writer or a poet talking about the empowerment of people and enlightenment of society. Now, this is why he is a unique, and as we go along, we will explain further the other unique features of his poetry and philosophy. Now, his Shah Lateef is generally recognized and respected here as a great Sufi saint. And his mausoleum at Bidshah, about 130 miles north of Karachi, is always visited by people from all walks of life. Millions of people who come to pay tributes to him. And it's
From
always
within Sindh and from outside?
from everywhere, all kinds of races, religions, colors, creeds, they come to pay his tribute, because as we will go along and explain, because his philosophy, his attracted has a universal character, and it goes beyond any distinctions of race, religion, color, creed, or country. That is why people from all walks of life, from all kinds of backgrounds, they come to pay tributes to him. So this is the unique feature about him. If we study him very closely, we will find that he comes across as a polymath who has made outstanding contributions in several disciplines, and his genius shows itself across several dimensions of life. Besides being a great Sufi poet, he has weaved the magic of his powerful poetry to make outstanding contributions in at least 7 different dimensions. And the verses in his poetry, they bear witness to the fact of his being this polymath poet. Because as we see his verses and we try to study the philosophy behind it, we find that there are at least 7 different dimensions new contributions that he has made in various dimensions of life. For instance, he comes across as a great scholar, a social scientist, a historian, a human rights champion, a humanist philosopher, a liberal democrat, and an enlightened reformer. You can go through a subcontinental history of 17th and 18th century. You will not find a person, a writer or a poet who has made outstanding contributions in these several disciplines. There have been great Sufi poets, or there have been great romantic poets, but the range of contributions that you find being made by Shah Lateef through his poetry, that range of contributions you will not find in almost any other person during 17th and 18th century. So what makes him, apart from these various dimensions, there is another unique feature about him. What makes him so distinctive above others, so distinctive above all, is that he is the first reformer of the subcontinent. Now that's a very important thing to notice, because he is living in a medieval subcontinent of 17th and 18th century. In that time and in that age, he is introducing ideas which were unheard of at that time. He is the first reformer, as I said, of the subcontinent, because he has introduced the idea of empowerment of people and enlightenment of society. Both these things were antithesis of what was happening in the subcontinent at that time. And for our audience, we will talk about three main features of his uniqueness, where he makes contributions which were unlike any other. Now, if we remember, think about the 17th and 18th century subcontinent of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, we find that this is a time of autocratic rulers. They were kings, or they were invaders, or they were conquerors. All of them were autocratic rulers. Whether the kings or the rajas or maharajas, whatever their title, they were all autocratic rulers. The whole system existed in order to add to the wealth and power of the ruler. Everybody, the poets and the writers who were attached to various courts, their main job was to write in praise of the kings and the rajas and maharajas. Some of them even talked about kings as zile ilahi, which means shadow of God on earth. That the king is not a mortal human being, that he is the shadow of God, and he is as powerful, as almighty on the land as the God above. In that age and time of sycophancy and praise of rulers, praise of autocratic kings, comes our reformer. He talks of he's not praising the power and glory of the kings. He's talking about the empowerment of people. And look at the difference. Most of the poets and the writers in the subcontinent at that time, they are writing Shahnamas in the praise of the king and glorifying the rule and the power of the king, and even taking him to be the shadow of God on earth. As an antidote to this, antithesis of this, comes our Shah Lateef. He says, no, they are not the shadows of God on earth. They have a job to do, and he is talking that if they do not do their job, which he says is to work for the well-being of the people, then these rulers have no right to rule and they should be removed. Now, here is a contrast. Most of the poets say he is not a mortal, he is a shadow of God, he is autocratic, he is all-powerful. And our poet says, the reformer, no, it's not him. It is the people who are powerful. They should be empowered, and this king should work for them, otherwise he should be removed. Second, he is the first one, sorry, Shah Lateef is the first one who is talking about, who is introducing the social contract theory in the subcontinent. That's a European theory of 17th and 18th century. He's introducing it for the first time. In substance, it says, if the ruler does not work for the well-being of the people, people have a right to remove him. That's in the sense, and we'll go and talk about it a little more in detail. The third feature that makes him so unique is that in that medieval decadent world, he is saying that the merit is the only guide for your upward mobility. Not your caste, not your color, not your pedigree, but what you are, your ability, your capability, and your merit. Nobody in the subcontinent talks about these except our unique Polymath poet.
Let's meet after the break. Welcome back. Shah Sahab, now let's talk about reform agenda of Shah Lateef. How would you let our viewers know about this?
Yes, Morai Sahab, as you said, that he is the first reformer of the subcontinent. Nobody talked about these ideas in the 17th and 18th century in the subcontinent. Ideas of empowering people, ideas of enlightenment of society, these were unheard of, and he has a unique feature. That is his main unique contributions. Now, as we said, I was describing that among the 7 different contributions that he has made, there was one that he is also a great social scientist. Now, a social scientist is the one who has studied and analyzed these conditions of society in which one is living, social, economic, and political conditions. So Shah Lateef studied in depth the social, economic, and political conditions of the society of Sindh and the regions around. Rajasthan, Gujarat, Balochistan, South Punjab. These areas where he traveled, he studied these. So he analyzed the conditions as a social scientist, the way people were living in social, economic, and political aspects of their life. But then he goes a step further. He's not just a theoretician or an academic who says, analyzes the society and leaves it as such. He doesn't leave it. Where the social scientist analyzes the ills of the society, now the reformer in him comes to suggest practical measures how to remedy those ills. The social scientist says this society has these weaknesses. There's poverty, there's injustice, people have no status, there are indignities they suffer. The reformer comes in and he says, okay, I will suggest also the practical ways of how to remove these things, how to remedy these ills in the society. Therefore, his reform agenda, as you were asking, his reform agenda is two-pronged. It has two parts. First part is he is talking about self-empowerment. People, you should improve, upgrade yourself. And number two, he is talking about a culture change in society. How to move a medieval society into an enlightened modern society. So the reform agenda that you are asking, his reform agenda is, as I said, two-pronged. First prong is about self-empowerment. We will talk about that in this session. Now his reform agenda, the first part of the reform agenda about self-empowerment revolves around four major steps. He has studied, as a social scientist, he has studied the ills of society. What are the causes that produce these symptoms of poverty and indignities and injustices? Why are these symptoms being created? What are the underlying causes? Now, how to remove those causes? And he suggests, all right, if you follow these four steps, you will empower yourself and you will be able to remove the causes which are making you suffer these indignities in life in the medieval world. First, acquire knowledge. And in very simple words, he says, don't pass away as you came in life. Don't leave life. Mehran thi mari vya, mahir thi na moa. Don't leave life as you came, illiterate, without education, without knowledge, without skills. When you were born, when you pass away, acquire knowledge, acquire excellence, become experts, become problem solver. So he says, acquire knowledge, but not just low-level knowledge. Become expert, achieve excellence, and become problem solvers. And again, he gives an example. If you are not acquiring knowledge, if you are not an expert, if you are not a problem solver, that is suicidal for you. And he says, "Pani amathe jhupada murakh unyamaran." You will die of thirst even when you are sitting on water, because you are ignorant, you are uneducated, you are unskilled, you have no knowledge. So acquire knowledge for survival. That is the first point of his self-empowerment. Second, don't waste time. There is an English poet, Geoffrey Chaucer, about 15th century or something. And he says, Chaucer, there's a famous quotation from him, "Time and tide wait for no one." Now here is our poet reformer, Shah Lateef. He says, "Dec30 kaay nahe vel veharji." Don't waste time. Same thing that Chaucer is saying. Time doesn't wait for you. Don't waste time. Whether it is hot or cold, whether it is day or night, don't waste time and be prepared. You should always be prepared so that when an opportunity arises, you can benefit from it. If you are lazy, if you are wasting the time, even if an opportunity arises, you will not be able to benefit from it, and that time will pass away. The time and tide, it will not wait for you. So the second part of self-empowerment is, do not waste time, because time will not come back again. And in the modern world, as we say, time is money and time is value. Well, he's talking about the same thing 300 years ago. Don't waste time. Be prepared so that when opportunity comes, you are able to benefit from it. You are able to empower yourself and rise above. Third, the third thing he advises is to work hard. If we go back and see how did European society change? We will find that one of the main important feature or contributor to the reform movement in Europe was the work ethics, the importance of work ethics. That work is worship. Do not downgrade this. Work hard, and as he said, and this is another democratic aspect in Shah Lateef's poetry, when he says, Sutauthi jag, Sultani Sohag Nindu Nakade Mile. What he's saying, the reward for your hard work is right there. You will become a sultan or a king, have the same feature. What is a king or a sultan's main feature? Wealth and power.
Privileged person.
Privileged person. So he said, this privilege is not restricted to the king. You can also be prosperous and rich and powerful if you work hard. Sutauthi jag, Sultani Sohag. You will get it if you work hard. The second thing that comes from this is very interesting. What he's saying is, look at the democratic principle and the idea of equality in him. What he's saying is that everyone can achieve the wealth and prosperity of a king. It's not restricted to only certain royal family. This is the principle of equality. If you work hard and you have equal opportunities, you can be as rich as the king. In fact, now there are some entrepreneurs who are even richer than many kings. If it is Jeff Bezos of Amazon or Facebook inventor.
If you like, I can add one more
Yeah.
poem. Tange me tane baddu panjo taraho. When you start journey, you make all preparations. Une me aane kon dindi kubyo. When you start journey into the sea or into the river, in case you go into the deep waters, none else will help you. You be prepared for everything.
So the third point was, work hard and you can achieve the same status as a king. The same power and prosperity can be yours. Fourth, ask questions. Be curious. Be bold. Don't accept the status quo as a kismat or a fate or a destiny. I'm poor, I'm suppressed, I am being victimized. It's my kismat. No, it's not your kismat. Nature has nothing to do with it. It is a man-made system and you have to work to remove that system. So he said, ask questions. Otherwise also in science, it is said, curiosity is mother of inventions. And it's not just in physical science, but in social sciences also. He says, ask questions and the doors will open to you for new opportunities. Puchan se pasan angana ajeevan japa. Ask questions and you will find the new opportunities will open up for you. So this is the prescription for self-empowerment that we get from Shah Lateef.
Let's meet after the break. Welcome back. Shah Sahab, now the last question is that what are the features of the culture change Shah Lateef is talking about?
Okay, as we were talking about, that his reform agenda is two-pronged. The first part is self-improvement, that the person, everybody has to work to improve and upgrade himself or herself. After all, it is his or her future. And if he or she doesn't work for improving this future, her own future, who else will work? So the first part is self-improvement, and we talked about it. The second part is that society must change. He said this medieval society of the subcontinent, of autocratic rulers who are being conceived and talked about as shadow of God on earth. Nobody is talking about people. Nobody is talking about their development, their prosperity, their dignity. So he said this society, it must change. The values of medieval society are against people. And he says, he is then in his verses, if we study them carefully, we will find that his verses provide evidence. They provide evidence of espousing certain values which in today's world will be called liberal and democratic values. Now those words were not used 300 years ago, but the values that you can find in his poetry through his verses are the same values which we now around in these days we talk about as liberal and democratic values. Now we'll talk about those. What are those values that we find in Shah Lateef's poetry, which we call, and we say that he is a liberal democrat, which was one of the dimensions that I mentioned earlier. We are saying it because he's espousing the values 300 years ago, which today are called democratic and liberal values. But the first liberal and in the liberal and the democratic system, in that value system, the first value is that all are equal. There is no discrimination among human beings, whether on the basis of race or religion or gender or caste or color or a country. And we find in his poetry examples where he is giving us proof of his universalism and his belief that all are equal, and he is wishing well to everybody. In his poetry and his verses we find he is talking about people of China, of Istanbul, of Samarkand, of Rome, of Americas, and every part of India, and is wishing them prosperity and well-being. Alam sab abad kari. Let everybody, wherever, whatever the color, whatever your race,
whole universe,
whole
universe,
we wish you well, irrespective of your race, religion, color, or creed. So that part we can see all are equal. Again, the proof of interfaith harmony and this principle of non-discrimination. Look at in his Shaj or Risalo, in his book of poems, you find Sur Ramkali, which is devoted to the life of Hindu ascetics, yogis, and it talks about their life and places of worship like Hinglaj and others. And the Sindhi Hindus, their faith in Shah Lateef's universalism, in his non-communalism, in his non-discriminatory philosophy is so deep that some of his verses, the Sindhi Hindus recite them as scriptures in their daily puja, in their daily prayers.
Even Muslims.
No, Muslim because he's a Muslim.
Yeah.
I'm talking that non-Muslims,
yes.
you see, they are reciting it as scriptures. So you find that there is in his verses the principle, the liberal principle that all are equal, the practical examples that I'm giving. Second, that all human beings have great potential. You can rise. I gave an example earlier when he says, Sutauthi Jag, Sultani Suhat you will get. That is equality for everybody. Your potential, you are able to rise to that level of a sultan or a king, provided you do these things. So, all human beings have great potential, That is a liberal philosophy. And that the government should work to see that there is an environment where people can realize their full potential. That's the purpose of government. So we find that in his poetry, in his verses, when he is upholding the same liberal value, that there is a great potential in human beings, and that potential can be realized, if they improve themselves, and number two, if the right environment is created. 3, liberals also talk about that women have full participation and equal rights in national life. We find this example, this liberal principle becoming almost the main feature of his poetry. In his whole poetry, as everybody knows, all his surahs, most of his surahs, are named after women heroines, his 7 queens. And he's highlighting very strong and independent women. Mughal, whether Sasri or Mughal or Marvi or Sohni, these are all very strong-willed people. They are very independent women and very powerful. And he is giving recognition to them. So he is respecting, he is going through the same, upholding same liberal value which is talked about today in the world. 4th, the liberal value is that your caste or your color or your pedigree does not matter. The liberals believe in merit being the only way to rise. Your capabilities, not somebody's son or a daughter or a cousin or what. And this is the principle, this is unheard of. In the medieval subcontinent of 17th and 18th century, we are just, dismissing, most of us do not give much importance to it. But try to think of, here is a man who is talking of values which were unheard of in that world. He says, "Naat na hai zaat te, jo wahe so lahe." Those who work hard, they are the ones who will rise. Your upward mobility in society, your status in society depends on your ability, on your work, not on your pedigree or a caste or a color or whose son or daughter you are. 5th, another liberal value is that liberals are against autocratic rulers. They want limited government so that people's rights, their dignity and their position is protected. And we find that as we were talking earlier, most poets in the subcontinent were talking of kings as a Zil-e-Ilahi, shadow of God on earth, absolute ruler. Whereas here comes our reformer. We said, no, they are not shadow of God on earth. They are not such big things. They are dependent upon people. So he's saying it is the people who should be empowered. And it is not an absolute ruler. He is against any absolute rulers. And his poetry will come to the next one, which will clarify this. 6th point is, he is again another unusual thing in the subcontinent. He is talking of accountable governance. Ruler is accountable. Nobody in the subcontinent ever thought that people have a right to hold the ruler accountable. The ruler was the shadow of God on earth. He is the absolute. He is the Mughal emperor. How can he be held accountable to people? But here is our reformer. That is what makes him so unique. And he says, these people who do not work for the rulers, who don't work for the people, these are deceptive and they should be removed. Bahar boli hanjaji, andar karo kaam, edo thalo tham, bhani chona bora kaje. All such anti-people ruler, they may make big noise, but they are empty and they are useless vessels and they should be removed. Now, what the purpose of our exercise today, I want to sum it up with this sentence. The purpose of our exercise today and this program is to convey to the rest of the world that Sindh had produced an enlightened reformer, a scholar whose message is universal, who is talking of interfaith harmony, of empowerment of people, of enlightenment of society, and this message needs to be conveyed universally to the global audience. And our documentary film, Shah Lateef, the Polymath poet of Sindh, is meant to help us in this mission of trying to introduce Shah Lateef as a as upholder of universal values, and we hope that our documentary and this program, they will contribute to giving him the proper status as a world-class genius, as a liberal and democratic philosopher, and a great reformer. Thank you for your time.
Certainly. Thank you very much. Goodbye.